Hello everybody, Sil here, and today we're going to do some world building. This is the name of this little series I'm starting. If you haven't watched my Oblivion video for this week, the Monday Oblivion video, then I'll just give you a brief rundown. And if you are new to the channel, hey, what's up? Welcome to Feed the Beast Prevents Skyfactory 3, a Minecraft mod that I'm just beginning to dabble in, so bear with me. I've been playing tabletop role-playing games since I was about 10. So for about 16 years now. And I started off as a player at 10, not really knowing what I was doing. But the people who introduced me to the games moved away. And it sort of became a thing that I just started doing on my own. I just started homebrewing entire settings and systems for friends to play because they liked the idea of it. But we really only had like old books from the 80s that we didn't really understand because we were 12 and 13 and whatnot. And we'd never played a game like that properly before. And most recently, I've been running a game session with a bunch of guys here in town called the Crit Idiots. And if you haven't seen the Crit Idiots before, check them out on my channel. They have their own playlist. I try to put up an episode every few weeks, but the sessions are long because we sometimes go for 6, 12 hours, who knows. And it's all in a setting I made myself, and I use this setting a lot. And I just thought it'd be cool if I were to dick around in Minecraft, trying to learn a new mod that I've never played before, and just talked world building. It's almost podcast-like. I just don't have anyone to riff off of at the moment. Though I am hoping at some point members of the Crit Idiots might join in, members of Tumblr who I know who are into gaming and game design and being the people who create the worlds and whatnot that go into those sort of things. Hopefully will work out. I think that would be really cool. So bear with me as I fiddle around in Minecraft. I want to make this full screen though. I thought I did that earlier. Full screen on. Now let's just double check, make sure our recording's still going on, because it isn't. Can I just set this to capture the full screen application now that it's full screen? Capture a specific window. There we go. Awesome. We're back. Oh, no. Sorry. Cancel. Whoop. Alright. As you can see, I've already started my world. And we started this world with a single piece of dirt. Right here. This piece of dirt. And a single tree. And from them, I've built this platform. That platform, I've started creating dirt. We have some sieves here. These are going to be used for fun stuff later. Once I start getting what I need in order. And what we need next is actually, if I'm not mistaken, I need to make a bunch more dirt. So we're going to pick all that up. And we're going to talk world building. So, you want to dungeon master a game. And you don't know what's right for you. So you want to play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Well, a really easy thing, especially with Dungeons and Dragons, Pathfinder, all those role-playing game tools, those rule sets, I'll have worlds already set using them. Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition has Ravenloft, it has the Forgotten Realms, it has all of this stuff pulled into it already, which is pretty awesome for people just starting out. I have a problem in that I have a really hard time creating stories in other people's settings just because I often feel like I'm first to follow how they run their stories. And I prefer doing things my way because, damn it, I know best. So I'm much more prone as a person. I guess I don't have any of those here. I'm much more prone as a person to. Second, we gotta hump these trees. There we go. Sweet. Boop. Boom. I am much more prone as a person to enjoy role playing if it's something I made myself. It doesn't need to be the rule system, but the setting matters a big deal to me because when I'm in someone else's setting, it often feels like to me that I'm not expressing myself the way I want to, if that makes sense. I'll admit that it might be a little hard to get that idea across, and some dungeon masters, especially people playing a new game, would totally prefer just buying a book with a preset adventure and try to play through it. And if you're playing with new players, maybe that's the best way to go. I always find that it's a little too railroady, and if characters start going off of the path of the campaign, you're kind of left having to improv with really no frame of reference, which is why I like being the person who's made everything. Because then if the players go off on some crazy tangent, I feel my improvisation in the moment is much more believable. And I want to talk an exercise I do. Oh, that's not the jump button. Sorry, I was playing some Oblivion earlier. Finishing the Oblivion campaign, actually, which is a really cool world. I really like the Elder Scrolls. Do I run games in the Elder Scroll universe? Not often. Do I think about it? Sure, every once in a while, because I have friends who are really into it. But it's not really something I would do voluntarily all that often, simply because, again, it's the situation of it sort of takes the control out of my hands. Because I can't really control the way the world goes without changing the world from the expectation of my players. A prime example, on once a week, give or take if we're lucky, I run a game of D&D 5th edition set in the Dragon Age universe, based off the Dragon Age video games. I am a big Dragon Age fan. I enjoy Inquisition a lot, and I've played through the game many a time. We need planks and sticks. Okay. I've played through Inquisition 100% on my channel, actually, so if you're interested, you could definitely catch up on that. And Inquisition is interesting because when I'm playing those games, I want to create a story that's interesting for my players, but because of just how I personally run games, I want to make sure the players are involved with the world on a whole, because I feel that giving the players a lot more scope is a really good way to take players, especially newer players, and get them invested into a world that they haven't seen before. Because suddenly the events that they recognize in those games and everything are way more personal because they're events that they know. They're the events they've seen. And that becomes difficult because then suddenly the players have a chance to interrupt what is called the canon. And the canon is basically the events that happen in the storyline as per the source material. And people might say, well, just ignore the source material. You're not in any way ordered in some way to follow it. You don't need to. I agree wholeheartedly. You don't need to follow the material. I am just one of those suckers who I feel like I'm obligated to treat the world I'm in like one of my own and sort of stick with the rules of that world, even if the rules of that world don't really work with the story I'm trying to tell. So, what that means is I'm often left in a situation where, as a dungeon master, it's hard for me to create a story using someone else's setting. I've done it successfully a few times. There's a good chance my players would say that my attempt at doing a 5e campaign in the Forgotten Realms, which they played earlier this year before the Crit Idiots happened, was a success. But even then, I was moving away from the canon of the event. Oh, this tree didn't grow. There we go. And I guess that's fine. But for me, I prefer just being in my own world. And when I look at people, some people look at me and say, how do you make something like that? How do you keep all that information in your head? Well, one, you should probably write it down. There's nothing wrong or, like against the rules of writing down an idea that you had at all. So, if you have an idea and you think it would be really fun for your group to play in a setting, start writing things down. That's very important in my opinion. Because so many times you have a good idea, you don't write it down, and then the idea is gone when you want it. And trust me, that sucks. Happens to me all the time. Especially with dialogue. So, I mentioned that I have an exercise I like to do. And when I say exercise, it's almost like, homework. But, in my own opinion, being creative is a lot like being good at a sport. It's something that you work at fairly regularly and get better at it. Right? You don't expect someone who plays a sport to immediately be good at said sport as soon as they start. Right? Like they exercise, they work out, they follow a regime, a training regiment. They might have a trainer, personal trainer, to show them better ways they can improve what they're doing. And those are all really good tools for physical activities. But the thing is, improvisation is more mental. And yeah, there are improv courses, there are books you can take, there are improv groups where they do improv exercises. But that's more general. And I feel it's less focused on the world building. Alright, I need to actually look up. How do I make this? Lava, water. Water bucket, water egg. Okay. So we need a bucket. We need sand, and we need cobblestone and lava. And for the lava, we need a crucible. Which is porcelain clay, which is clay and bone meal. So we need bones. So we do need to actually kill some things. Okay. Sorry. I'm trying to learn a new thing while have this conversation. Probably not the best idea I've ever had, but it's an idea and I've had it. So, I have an exercise that I do. And the exercise is pretty simple. And what I mean by pretty simple is that there is a website. It's a delightful website. It is called Donjon, Donjon. And I go to this website regularly because it will actually have a generator that will create planets. Random entire worlds. Which is pretty awesome if you think about it. And what I'll do is I will go there, and how it works is a lot like Minecraft. You enter in a seed, which is a random selection of numbers and letters and whatnot. And then it generates a world based off that seed. And you can control how much water there is, how much ice there is, how mountainous it is, whether or not the map plops down uh, cities and the like, or if you want to do those yourself. And I will go to this website and I will literally just spend 10-15 minutes just smashing the random seed button. Or if I'm feeling really adventurous, I will manually enter in about a dozen or so seeds. And I'll stop when I feel that I've hit a seed that looks interesting. So when I eventually see a planet that's like, oh, alright, I could see a world shaping around that planet. And I think that's a really cool little exercise. Well, I dropped my dirt. Exercise to do. Oh, we need more dirt. I think it's an excellent exercise to do because one, it breeds improvisation. It breeds creativity. You're looking at a situation you haven't dealt with before and going, how can I make something out of this? And that's like the whole purpose of being a dungeon master is presenting a situation to your players and seeing what they come up with. A dungeon master describes a scenario and then looks at the people he's playing with and says, all right, what do you do? All right, so this is a cool exercise I do for word building. I don't know if other people do it, but I definitely recommend it. Where I will randomly generate worlds until I find a world that I just think looks cool. And then I'll be like, all right, this looks cool. I'm going to run with it. I'm going to try and make something out of it. I really need to make some rope so I can start building under this. Alright. And one of the greatest examples of this was a time where I was playing. I was just playing with the website. I was doing what I said I do. I'm terrified. You know what? We're going to put everything important away. I went to the website. I was like, all right, I am going to smash my face against this key until it feels like I've hit on something important or something interesting. And what I eventually found was a pretty cool looking map. And then I was like, alright, now what am I going to do with this map? And what I decided to do was just look at it and try to come up with an explanation for why things on the map were the way they were. What could have event happened to lead to this mountain here? When did this mountain form? Why did it form this way? How does this particular ocean layout work for trade? What people would be most likely to occupy this particular land? Okay. No, 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 no. I'm just dead. Alright. Okay. I'm only mad because I'm bad. And I don't really know how I'm supposed to... Oh, hold up. We want to turn those off. Where are they? Oh, waypoints. Awesome. I don't know what I'm gonna do there. I want to go down there. I want to start building a level lower. Maybe it'll just wait till I get a jetpack because I suck. Okay. Okay, I need to build. So, I found a map. I rather enjoyed the map. So I was like, alright, sweet. I found a cool map. I'm going to run with it. So I just sat down and said, what happened on this map? And I was like, well, I want it to be a fantasy themed map. I want it to be very Dungeons and Dragons classic-esque, medieval fantasy sort of deal. I wasn't going steampunk too much or sci-fi. But then I was like, I've been doing that a lot lately. I want to mix it up a little bit. What if there was really cool technology, but it was just extremely rare or inaccessible? It already gives the players a reason to go adventuring by having this sort of technology that could exist in a situation just beyond their reach. So what I did was I just started to write. I just started to think about what I was doing and tried to make it work. And how did that work was basically I created an entire world, and it was pretty cool. And the whole premise of the world was that it was populated with halflings and elves and humans and because I was using a specific setting, a rule setting. Okay. I was creating a specific idea with a specific set of rules in mind, which is also a good idea if that's what you want to do. Think of what rule system you're going to use before you actually, start making the map, the setting. At least then you'll have an idea of what sort of technology and things you want to put into the world. And so I decided upon that. Oh boy, this is going to take forever on my own. Okay. And I came up with this idea. What if it was a sort of stereotypical fantasy world with humans and elves and orcs and lizard people who ruled the seas called saurians and all this other ultra dramatic nonsense and wars and politics between all these different races? And then what if one day aliens showed up? Mechanical aliens just ripped into the world. And with hyper advanced ships and weaponry and just took the place over. And I was like, that's a cool premise. It puts the tech into the world, that super high tech. It puts that into the world, and it gives me a position where I could easily come up with a way, how the tech is no longer more popular. Of course, an alien race shows up and takes over the world. What are people going to do? They're going to rebel, of course. They want their freedom. You can take da-da-da-da-da, but you'll never take our, what we want. Right? Like, that's just the idea I had. It was just, there's nothing wrong with going cliche. Cliches are your friends when you are creating something because they work. And they're familiar with players. Players understand a cliche. If you give a player a cliche, they can relate to it a lot easier. And you want to eventually move away from them. But as a starting ground, cliches are great. So what I did was created this world. You're not going to grow because this buddy grew on top of you, didn't he? Come on. There are probably way more efficient ways to do this, but this is just an ends to the mean, like an end to justify the means of the video. Please don't judge me too harshly for my poor Minecraft play. So, can't wait till I can just get all this shit automated. And so that's what I came up with. And I was like, I don't want just regular dwarves and gnomes in my setting. What if I made some of the old races cool and different? So these aliens, these malforged machines, who are basically just a version of the Warforged from the Forgotten Realms Eberron settings. The regular D&D, the Eberron setting had a group of mechanical soldiers called Warforged. And the Malforged sort of serve that purpose. They are sent out by their masters, who are called the Pharaohs, because, again, you're playing with a cliche. Using terminology that the players easily understand helps when you're building a setting, because they won't get confused. And you won't either and call it the wrong name and get your players upset because you called it the wrong name. How are we supposed to get it right if you can't? So they're sent to these planets to sort of seed them for the Pharaoh's arrival. Not that anyone knows that. It's the big mystery, basically. And so I had it so that the the Malforged, these robot machines, created the dwarves and the gnomes. They made the dwarves literally out of rock, which gave dwarf characters a really cool aesthetic, because suddenly it's like, oh, I'm like actually made of rock. And the gnomes were created out of finer gems and the like gemstones and finer metals like silver and gold, which suddenly made them way more cool than just the usual gnomes. And then I was like, alright, but the problem is that, you know, the world is still basically enslaved to these super tech powerful entities, which could be fine. You could totally run a campaign where it's the players who are trying to spark the revolution. Oh, I didn't actually do the thing. I just got it ready and then canceled it. Who are trying to spark the revolution. That's really cool. I like setting my games once the world's just done up a little bit more, personally. But that is 100% a flavor thing that I prefer. And that is not something that anyone else would ever need to deal with. I really need to get that cobblestone generator up and running. Like, nothing is getting done this video. And I am trying. So then I was like, alright, here's the problem. I've made an enemy that's too strong. What's going to happen that is going to make it so that the people of this planet can overcome their adversaries, the mechanical races? What will stop them? Because they're too strong. Their equipment is too good. Their weapons are too powerful. Ordinary people wouldn't stand a chance against them, even nationwide. So then I was like, well, let's play with the concept of things we don't quite understand, or at least I don't. How about a solar flare? Solar flares happen. They can interrupt technology. This would be a world that probably has never faced a solar flare before. Let's have it happen so that the solar flare happens and disables all of the machines. And that's a really cool sort of cataclysmic event. Because suddenly, the dwarves and the gnomes are free, the other races are free, but they're surrounded by the shadow of this empire who has existed for so much longer and are terrifying. And every time they look out, they see the remains of their cities, and they're trying to rebuild their empires. This is another great time to set a game, because there's this constant feel of unease. You never know when the machines are going to wake back up. And even if you could spend your time destroying them, Lord knows how many of them are hidden away in places that you just don't know. Right? Like that's a really cool sort of setting to set a game in my opinion. Do I have enough for 20 in each? I don't think so. No, close though. This is just so inefficient, and it's the only way I know how to do things, so I'm gonna keep doing it. And there's this idea that this constant fear, and even if you make it shortly after, several of the players could have been slaves themselves who are now free. That could be an awesome storyline to play with. And I think that stuff like that is pretty awesome to think about. And then I was like, well, let's go a little bit more with it. Let's delve deeper in the rabbit hole, because right now the world doesn't really have much magic. It is cool, weird tech that I don't fully understand, even myself as the person making it. But let's get even crazier. Let's start dabbling in the arcane. All right, what am I even supposed to do? I need a crucible. And I just don't know how to make that happen. Alright. So then I was like, what if people up until this point really didn't understand magic, except for the underwater race? Let's say that the underwater race. Can I make a crucible another way that will, like, work? Because there are other types of crucibles. And if maybe I just don't need to make the one I'm thinking about. Wood and slabs. And then what I thought was, let's get magic back into the world. Let's make it so that let's say people up until this point hadn't really known what magic was, but they discover it. And then let's say they discover that the magic can reawaken the Malforged. So suddenly you have all these people who are able to awaken generations later, the people who oppress them, and they awaken to discover that they're very different. Suddenly these people aren't quite so evil. It almost looks like the solar flare might have tampered with their programming or something. Who knows? But it was very clear that not everyone was happy with this idea. Alright, so now I have to put stone in that? I really need to make cobblestone. Tools. Can I? Thank you. And then I thought, how would other people react? This is for compression to the Malforged being awoken. And then I felt, well, probably the dwarves and gnomes would freak out. Oh, does it need to be cooked? Craft and cook a crucible. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And so that allowed me to create a scenario where, in their panic, the dwarves and other and gnomes struggle to find a means to combat their ex-masters. And they awoken a monster that was sleeping in the planet's core. Because, you know, that's a place where in a fantasy setting most people probably would never see. And it would be pretty cool to have some sort of beastie be there. And this beastie saw that the Malforged had made an abomination of its rock and stone, taking what it felt that was its own thing, the dwarves and whatnot, and turned them into living things that were afraid. And it didn't like that. And so it started to, you know, rebel. So suddenly you have a monster that's ravaging the world, created by the quote-unquote good guys to try and combat who they perceive the bad guys to be. Which is another fun little thing to play with. And this would be another interesting time to set a campaign. And I was like, well, now there's just this huge doomsday monster running around. And we don't want to be like, you know, DC. So let's say the monster gets defeated. Let's say that a collection of very powerful heroes rally together and destroy the monster. But it's so powerful that it doesn't quite die. Its death throes release a miasma across the world, this sort of poisonous fog that mutates and magically changes things. Suddenly now you're mixing in a really cool random element that could trap characters in. Not like actually trap them, but create great improvisational moments for the characters where things aren't going the way they expected and suddenly they're stuck dealing with all these terrible things that they don't quite understand. And they have to be prepared, because if they ever went into one of those things in the wild, they need to have the right sort of safety equipment, or else they could risk being mutated as well. It just, again, it creates a cool, believable sort of tension in the world. And I think that that's a pretty cool thing. And this was all just from spending an hour to writing, just looking at a map and going, oh, what if that huge mountain wasn't the mountain, but wasn't actually a mountain, but instead the carcass of this ancient monster from the core of the planet that was awoken to defeat the bad robots who were being resurrected. That'd be so cool if instead of a mountain, this was like literally a husk of this ancient being. And it's a cool thing to do. And if you ever want to DM your own setting, it's a cool thing to look at. Just making your own worlds. As someone who does a lot of home brewing when it comes to rules, I make my own entire rule set sometimes, and that's also very satisfying work and a lot of fun. And it's a lot more work, though, of course, to make an entire set of rules than just adapt a world to somebody else's rules. And I ran a campaign. I ran a campaign in that world, in the Fantasy Age setting. And it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of cool things happen. There were a lot of cool characters, and people really seemed to enjoy it. And, I mean, again, it was pretty simple, just to take a little bit of my time just writing and coming up with a cool story. Alright, we need more shears. Either way, if you have some like tips or tricks for this, I mean, I'll listen. I don't know when I'll be able to implement them just because I'm kind of hot trash and trying out new things takes me a long time because I'm old. But what I'm trying to get across is this idea that one, being a dungeon master, while a lot of work, isn't as scary as it should be, and a lot of it is just making things up as you go and having fun with it. And if you ever do want to try to get into your own world building, I definitely recommend doing what I suggested. And just spending a... I should have just compressed this. I'm not a smart man, people. Please forgive me my grievances. I keep forgetting that compression is a thing. I'm gonna try doing it now, actually. Gravel, compress another gravel. Sweet. Which means I need my compressed hammer. But no, I definitely feel like we do need a piece of glass. That is a great website, first of all, for just giving ideas to people. And you should definitely use it if you're ever curious about making your own world. Because it's just really good. Alright, we got a bunch of bone meal. Oh, well, snap. We can get it from dust. I didn't know that. Alright, well, see, that thing over there was a huge waste of my time now. Alright. Okay. Forgive me my sins, for I know not what I do. Well, poop. I didn't mean to pick that up. Get back in there, you. Fine. Because we need to plant more trees now. And we need to get a few sets of trees going. Now, is it just glass that we need for the crucible? No. It's the generator we needed. Quite clear glass is glass with bone meal all around it. I'm so confused. All right. Well, either way, that's what I wanted to first talk about. That exercise that I do where I look at this really neat website that I cannot stress that I recommend it enough. And I just go there and I make things work. Just by spending a little bit of time choosing that I'm going to work on it. And if you're going to do your own world building, I definitely recommend it. It's pretty awesome. Ba-da-da-da-da-da. Awesome. And man, it's cool beans. You should definitely try it out. We'll be back next week probably with more uh, of whatever the fuck I called this, world building. Hopefully we'll have more people with us. If not, oh well. I still need to figure out how I'm going to build down. I guess once I get a bucket and water, I could just do it then. I'm probably going to play this off camera, so when we come back, the world will be very different. But as you can tell, I'm trying to start a farm over here and a monster spawner over there, and over there will be livestock. So that could be fun. And hey, when we all come back, we're probably going to be building a world together. And won't that be amazing?